Graduate school is rigorous. You may find that faculty challenge your ideas more than professors did in your undergrad program. They may be less specific about what they want from you on papers and exams. They may be much more critical of your work than your earlier professors. And don't be shocked if you get sent to the writing center, since academic graduate level writing is very different from other forms of writing. Almost all graduate students suffer from imposter syndrome, the feeling that you are not prepared enough to be in the room with all the other students in your class. And yes, your professors also struggled with that in graduate school. Here are some tips on how to process what might sound like harsh criticism and the negative voices in your head.
If your advisor is critiquing you, and harshly, that's because they have high expectations for you. That means they have faith in you and they think that you could achieve greatness and you're just not there yet. I would not worry if they're hard on you. I would worry if they're easy on you, because that might mean they don't care. A professor is not getting upset with someone unless they care about them greatly. They're not going to spend the time to write 800 comments on a paper if they don't think the student has the potential to do much, much better than they're doing. So every time you see a comment, know that that professor could have been doing anything, but they took the time to put in that comment. That means their goal is to educate you and make you better. So I think it's about attributions. It's thinking about, why would they be so tough on me? Why would they put 8 million comments on my paper? It's because they care. It's because they want you to do better and better and better. And if it just so happens that style of your professor doesn't work for you, talk to them. Let them know. Say, look, when you critique me that way, it made me believe you felt this. And the advisor will tell you, no, it's because I think you've got phenomenal potential. And hear it straight from the advisor. We don't critique people because we want to be mean. We do it because we want you to achieve at the level we believe you can achieve at.
Graduate school is really tough, and everybody here is smart. So all the students who came here have succeeded as undergraduates. They're used to getting A's and B's on papers and projects and other kinds of assignments. And so when they come to graduate school, they're surrounded by everybody else who's also a high achiever and has done really well. And now the expectations are that much higher. The bar is set that much higher. And so that sometimes, especially in the first or second semester, that they run into experiences where sometimes for the first time in their life, as a student, they get a bad grade or they get really critical comments back from a professor. And it can be hard to know, how do you deal with that? I think the number one thing to do is, first of all, not despair and not doubt yourself. And, do I belong here? There's always the imposter syndrome. Everybody suffers from it, so including professors. But I think the most important thing to do is go talk to the professor, right? Go talk to him and say, where did I fall short? What can I do? These are my goals. I want to do better. And the professor will help you. It might mean that you need to kind of kick it into another gear. That's what graduate school is all about. This is education in a different gear.
So I give a lot of feedback on written work. I tend to not critique students too strongly in front of other students because I know how crushing that can be personally from experience, and how that can weaken your self-esteem and your confidence, especially when you're just starting out. Because I think every student starting out in a PhD program already feels sort of like they don't belong there, like an imposter. And so if they hear a professor giving them really strong feedback or critique in front of the whole class, that can really debilitate them in their confidence. So I tend to give feedback and critique through written work more. And I try to be diplomatic as possible, comprehensive, realistic, but also diplomatic in giving feedback. But if you'll often get a paperback from me that you submit, or my students will get a paperback that might have, be full of comments and suggestions and edits, but at the very end, it'll say, "Great job. I enjoyed reading your paper." So I try to balance the critique with, positive feedback when I can.
I think the critiquing part, I think it's a really challenging issue. And I'll be honest, I think it's harder for female faculty because sometimes, there's this image of the mother figure There's more of an expectation that this older male professor is going to be hard. And then when the female professor, isn't quite as like their mommy, I don't know what their mommy was like, sometimes it's a little hard. So I think there's a number of ways that as a faculty member, I can help students come to understand the process. Students need to understand we're there to help them. And when we criticize, our goal is to make them better. We have all been there. I mean, I tell them, look, I went to MIT, for crying out loud. They had no writing center. I had to teach myself how to write in academic ways. You don't have to. We have here, not just me, but the writing center and the other faculty. We're here to help you so you don't have to have it quite as hard as some of us did.
At least my style is I don't want to criticize them directly because I always, tell them what they could have done better in a different way. So that's pretty much it is. So like a couple of examples, like recently I have a PhD student, I gave him a referral to do an intern interview. I have actually given 3 students referrals, 1 master's, 2 PhDs, and he did something not so good at the interview, and which reflected back. So I actually had a talk with him, but I did not say, oh, what you did something was really wrong. I just said you have some feedback. Some of them are probably would be beneficial for you in the future. Do not do this again. I think he first felt a little bit awkward. But I think he took that in, and later he said, yes, I realized, I probably got too comfortable. I shouldn't have said this. I will remember that in the future. And I don't think I've met students feel shocked by the criticisms. But sometimes it just takes some time for them to take in the reality. But the overall objective is to help them.
To me, the difference from being a critic and being an artist isn't all that extreme at graduate school, because I'm actually not teaching people how to make stuff. We figured that at this point, they're going to figure out how to make it on their own. I don't make art myself, but I look at an awful lot of art. So I can actually teach them different ways of looking at things. And I think that all artists kind of are their own best critics because they actually spend more time looking at their own work than anyone else does. They're analyzing, assessing, scrutinizing, criticizing, tearing it apart, building it again. So as a critic, I think I help them develop the critical side of their practice. And my colleagues who are visual artists, they come at it the same way. They since they make stuff on their own, they can talk about the process of making with more intimacy than I can. But most of it is, you're finished making it now. It's out there in the world. Let's look at it and figure out how it works, what it does, what does it mean, what are its claims, what's at stake. And we all do that equally.
As for the critiques, I've been actually pretty lucky, I have to say. So most of my students are pretty well versed. They can take it. I do have a couple of students who've had issues with faculty members, and I tend to put them towards the dean of students because she has that background to handle those situations. I do not. As well as I will talk to my director, but even my director believes the dean of students, it's a better situation because it takes the department out of it. I think sometimes students think, well, a department will defend a faculty member, and that's not always true, but there's 2 sides to every story. So I think having someone like a third person as the dean of students really helps that situation.
Advice I would offer for the people just starting out is don't be afraid to fail. The more you fail, the better. Also, don't try to show everything you know in the first piece you make, because you know a heck of a lot more than you think you do, and you cannot possibly pack all that into one piece. But a lot of people think in coming in, like, oh, I'm among all these other smart people. I have to show how smart I am. I'm going to put every bit of wisdom I have into this one piece, and it becomes this kind of claustrophobic, everything plus the kitchen sink nightmare. So just give it time, let it go. To me, what's really important when you start out is to try new things, experiment with things, be uncomfortable in things. But what you're working on your first year is yourself. It's not any finished piece that everyone's going to revere. What matters is what you learn from what you're making, not what you're making. If you're always the smartest person in the room, you probably didn't go to a very good school. It's great to be at a place where everyone else is smart, because you actually are. You just don't think you are. If you play tennis with someone better than you, you usually play better than you do if you play with someone like me. And it's and to me, part of being an artist is being insecure. So it's not. There's never the singularity of imposter. Every single artist, at no matter what level they're at, if they're really pushing themselves, they think they're messing up. There's no such thing as it's like, oh, then at a certain point in your career, you become comfortable and everything you do is done with great confidence and awesomeness. It's no matter how good you are, your next body of work, you're pushing yourself beyond whatever that was, to the point of embarrassing yourself or failing in public and falling flat on your face. And that's just part of the deal. So it's like, if you feel you're not good enough and you're not achieving enough, you're in the right place.